If you took a time machine back to the year 2017, start of the year, January, and you said, hey, in 5 years' time, the top 2 teams in the Pacific Division would not be the Edmonton Oilers with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. It wouldn't be the Calgary Flames with Johnny Gaudreau and Mateychuk and Sean Monahan. Oh wait, they're all gone. If you took a time machine back to 2017 and you told them that maybe a month into the 2022 season, the top 2 teams in the Pacific would be Vegas and Seattle, they would have been like, what? Now, in 2017, this was before Vegas was introduced to the NHL. We all kind of knew they were coming, but they hadn't played their inaugural season yet. Seattle was kind of on the horizon internally, but there wasn't anything in the public eye at this point in time. So, knowing that in 5 years' time there would be both a Vegas and a Seattle team doing as well as they've been doing, I feel like that's kind of nuts. Now, for Vegas, we're kind of used to them being good. I mean, them being at the top of the Pacific is not necessarily the most surprising thing in the world. I guess you could say it's sort of surprising considering the goaltending tandem they have, but either way, Seattle is right there as the second best team in the Pacific and tied for 4th best in the entire NHL. The Seattle Kraken have been on a roll, and after what was a pretty slow start for their squad, they've won 5 straight games, including a 5-1 win against the Nashville Predators yesterday. They're 7-1 in their last 10, and they're an absolute beast of a team on the road for some reason. They have a negative record at Climate Pledge Arena, 3-3-1. Meanwhile, on the road, they're 5-1-1. The Kraken are dominating right now. And you could definitely go out there and say that this type of thing is not sustainable, the defense is bad, the goaltending is bad, whatever, but it doesn't excuse the results on paper that, hey, they're winning games, they're getting production from many players on this team, and the goaltending is good enough, at least at this point in time of the season. Let's go over to the Kraken and see what they accomplished yesterday, scoring 5 goals against the Nashville Predators. The score was 4-0 after the first period with goals from Eberle, Burakovsky, and Borgen. Philip Forsberg scored the only goal of the second, and then Brandon Tanev from Yanni Gourde made it 5-1. And if you go over to the Seattle Kraken and their production in general, you'll see that they've got one guy that is pretty much at a point per game, Andre Burakovsky. Schwartz and Eberle are at 10 points in 14 games each. Matty Beniers is tied with Brandon Tanev with 9 points in 14 games. And then you go further back down, Jared McCann, Morgan Geekie, Wenberg, some of these guys haven't played all 14 games on the season, and then you see Oliver Bjorkstrand, Sprong, etc., etc. And, you know, when I see this team on paper, if you go over to the NHL's Fantasy Tools website, and you look at the current point production paces for all the players on the Seattle Kraken, and you see Burakovsky on pace for 76 points, Sprong is on pace for 67, Schwartz on pace for 59, McCann is on pace for 36 goals, which is crazy for him. When I see this roster right here, and I say, wow, the Seattle Kraken have 9 guys on pace for 50 points and above, and that's not even including Alex Wenberg or Oliver Bjorkstrand, Ryan Donato. This team reminds me of Vegas. And I'm thinking about Vegas in their first season, when they just had so many guys from different walks of NHL stardom and paths coming together and being good. Being the best versions of themselves all together on one team. Now, I'm not going to say that Seattle is going to make the finals this year, but so far, I mean, there's been a lot more to cheer about than to cheer against when it comes to this Kraken team. Their second NHL season ever, and already they've got 9 guys on pace for 50 points, 5 guys on pace for 20 goals, and 4 guys on pace for 29 goals. Beniers, Geekie, and Schwartz are all on pace for 29 goals in this season. Jared McCann, as we had said, is on pace for the most with 36. And so Seattle hockey has been exciting, man. And this comes from a multitude of things. Firstly, the games that they're winning, they're playing off against some teams that are not really the best. And sure, you could say, oh, you're discrediting the Kraken and their wins. I'm going to say they're taking advantage. They're taking advantage of the schedule they have, and they're playing against teams in games that should be winnable. And guess what? They're winning them. If you go over to the goaltending and see what's going on here with the Kraken, you can see that Martin Jones is leading the team with a .901 save percentage, which by all accounts isn't great, but then you realize the guy's 6-3-1, he's got a shutout on the season, and he's got a 2.61 goals against, which is actually pretty solid, all things considered. The save percentages are not great, but the team is finding ways to win games. The goaltenders, Martin Jones specifically, is finding ways to win against opposition goaltenders, and I don't know, for some reason, after what was a pretty lackluster start, the team has gotten a pretty good, consistent strategy together. This is an article published by Adam Proteau yesterday on the Hockey News. This was published before the Seattle Kraken beat the Preds 5-1, so everything that's talked about here is kind of referring to the Kraken and their 4-game winning streak. Can the Kraken continue to exceed expectations? They're second in the Pacific and 8th in the league, but the defense must improve if they want to stay this good. Proteau writes about how the bar was pretty low for the Kraken and they went 1-2-2 to start out the year, but since then they've gone 7-2-0, and they've beaten Pittsburgh, Calgary, Minnesota, and now Nashville. Again, talking about teams that are kind of on slumps right now, they're taking advantage. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, Proteau writes. A ton of things are going to have to go right for Seattle to be in a playoff race at the end of the regular season, and while a couple of elements of their game have surged and improved, there are some nagging problems that could be the difference between them making and missing the postseason. In the positives category, there is a conversation about goals for and how the team is scoring goals, all the players are scoring points, and that's awesome. However, the problem for the Kraken remains in their play in their own zone. They've slightly improved on their 2021-2022 goals against average of 3.46 per game, ranking them 9th worst in the league, and their penalty kill that year, which was 2nd worst in the NHL, to 3.08 goals against per game, which is now 14th, and a 73% penalty kill, which is 23rd in the league thus far this season. Their defensive numbers haven't gotten worse, but the fact remains they're a work in progress on the back end, and goalies Martin Jones, Joey Daccord, and injured starter Philip Grubauer haven't stolen any games per se. In all of its 6 losses, Seattle has given up either 4 or 5 goals. That has to change in a hurry if the Kraken are going to keep up with teams like Calgary, Edmonton, and LA in their division. The article then pretty much says that it's not really their fault that they're not completely on the Kraken bandwagon, but still, all you gotta do is keep an eye out, see how this team plays and whether or not they're able to adjust, win a few more games, and just keep up the momentum from here. Few picked the Kraken to make the playoffs this year, so at this point, they're playing with house money. Seattle fans and media won't be happy with regression of any facet in their game, but if the Kraken can take another small step forward, they won't face much, if any, backlash. Perhaps next season will be different, and fan patience will begin to run dry, but savvy supporters know this is a process, and that means they can't lose sight of the forest because of the trees. Their fans should enjoy the success they've had this season, but being expectant of continued success at this level is setting yourself up for disappointment. What is that, like, Zendaya quote from Spider-Man? What is that, like, if you expect disappointment, then you can never really be disappointed? Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Good life advice, honestly. Really nice written article by Adam Proteau here. The link will be in the description if you want to go ahead and read it. There's a lot more things that are mentioned here that I did not talk about in this video, but that pretty much concludes what I wanted to talk about here. The Kraken have had some pretty good spread-out scoring. They've got guys all over the lineup producing points. If this team ends up with 4 or more 30-goal scorers, then that would be absolutely wild. And heck, even just the 9 50-point pace guys, that in and of itself is amazing. So if the forwards and the Kraken are able to continue their scoring in the same ways that they have been to kick off the year, and they all end off with 50-plus points and almost 30 goals each, then hey, I could totally see a world where the Kraken fix their defensive issues, the goaltending gets a tad better, and they end up squeaking into a wild card somehow. I mean, that's pretty low expectations for a team that's second in the division right now, but hey, it's Seattle. They were pretty bad last year, and now, after a 1-2-2 start, they're up here 5th in the league. So good on Seattle for doing your thing. Talk to me in the comments on your thoughts about the Kraken and your opinions on whether or not they're going to be able to sustain the winning and the production that they've had thus far. Do you think they come back down to earth soon? And if so, when does that happen? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Juraj, and bye.